There are a lot of people out there who will tell you that you need to quit sugar, and it might be something that you're interested in, but when it comes to quitting sugar, there are some things that you need to know. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. So a lot of people are focused on sugar right now. It is kind of the nutritional boogeyman of the moment. It's what everyone is talking about, and a lot of people are trying to cut out sugar. And if you're here, then you might be one of those people. And I've actually heard a lot from viewers about wanting to quit sugar because one of the big videos on my channel is about my personal experience when I tried to give up desserts for a whole year. And in that video, I talk about how the experience was for me. It was something that I did when I was in high school, so I talk a lot about my mindset during that time, what brought me to that place, and the impacts of trying to do a year without having sweets, most of which were negative. And I get a ton of comments on that video from people asking me to talk about quitting sugar, saying that they themselves want to quit sugar and it's something that they're trying to do. So I thought it was time for me and you to sit down and talk about this, and for me as a dietitian to give you the information that you need when it comes to quitting sugar. Now, when it comes to quitting sugar, it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. For some people, it's just cutting out sweet foods, desserts, things like that. For some people, it's about getting rid of processed sugars but keeping natural sugars like honey and maple syrup. For some people, it's about cutting out all added sugars, including honey and maple syrup. Some people go to the next step, which is cutting out fruit, and some people say that you also need to cut out starchy foods like bread and pasta because those things also get broken down to glucose in your body. So there's a lot of different variations on this thing, but I'm gonna kind of talk about them all together in this video. So when it comes to quitting sugar, no matter what that means to you, I want to tell you that you shouldn't do it. Now wait before you click off this video because you wanted someone to give you tips for how to quit sugar. That's not exactly what this video is, but I think it's something that you need to see because there's so much misinformation out there when it comes to sugar and trying to eliminate it. And if you are looking for tips and stuff, that stuff is out there and you can find it, but what I'm going to tell you today is what you need to know about quitting sugar, and the truth is, it isn't all it's cracked up to be. So today I'm going to break down some of the things you might have heard about quitting sugar and why to do it, and then I'm going to tell you what you can do instead. So the first thing you might have heard is that excess sugar is associated with negative health outcomes, so that means that it would be best for you to cut sugar out entirely. So there is some research that suggests that overdoing it with added sugars could be related to poorer health, but that doesn't mean that you should have zero sugar in your life. We don't need to go from way too much to none at all. It's perfectly fine to have some sugar in your life. It's just about not overdoing it. And cutting out sugar entirely could actually have a negative impact on your health. If you're cutting out nutritious foods like fruits and carbohydrates, that's limiting the variety in your diet, which could limit your access to certain nutrients and phytochemicals. And we have to remember that carbohydrates in and of themselves are a nutrient. We can only get energy from three things: carbs, fat, and protein, and we need to have all three. And even if you're just cutting out added sugars, that can still be a problem and have negative health outcomes because it can make you obsessive or anxious about your food choices and every single bite that goes into your mouth, and it could isolate you from your community. Relationships are such an important part of our overall health, so if cutting out sugar means that you're cutting out social events or that you are distant or stressed out at social events, that's not good either. Another thing you might have heard is that cutting out sugar is the secret to weight loss, and this is something that you see a lot of times in testimonial form. Someone saying, I cut out sugar and I lost X number of pounds in X amount of time. Really, for any diet, you will see this sort of thing. And if you go on any of my previous videos where I talk about diets or diet supplements or anything like that, there will always be people in the comments saying, I did this and I lost weight. Now, this has the undertone that if something results in weight loss, then that means that it is a healthy thing to do. But weight and health are not the same, and just because doing something makes you lose weight, that doesn't mean that it's healthy for you or good for you. And as far as the weight loss itself, yes, you might lose weight if you cut out sugar, but that's the truth if you cut out any food or food group that you eat often. Really, all that's happening is you're eating less food. Plus, that weight loss almost certainly isn't going to last. Overall, 95% of people who lose weight end up gaining the weight back, and 2/3 of those people end up gaining back more weight. So even if weight was the problem, which it isn't, but even if you thought that it was, doing something like cutting out sugar isn't going to be beneficial to you in the long run. Something else you might have heard is that you need to detox from sugar. Now, a lot of quitting sugar type programs and plans are wrapped up as being some sort of sugar detox. Now, detox diets overall aren't a real thing. I have a whole video about detox diets. If you want more info on that, I will link that for you. But detox also isn't a thing that needs to happen or that can happen when we're talking about sugar specifically. Sugar isn't stuck in your body wreaking havoc, and it isn't something that you can cleanse out of your system. Any sugar that you have eaten has either been used as energy right then, or it has been stored as energy for later, either in the form of glycogen in your muscles and liver or as body fat. So that energy is there when you need it so that you don't have to be eating 24 hours a day. That's a pretty awesome thing that our body does. It gives us some time to do other things other than eat by storing that energy for later. So it's not something that you need to detoxify from. It's either been used or it's just there like any other food that you've eaten, waiting to be used as energy when you need it. Something else that's said a lot about sugar is that the more sugar you eat, the more sugar you will crave. So the idea here is that if you want to stop craving sugar, then you need to stop eating it. And if you keep eating sugar, you'll just eat more and more and more. But this just isn't how our bodies work, and I think it's easier to understand if you start thinking about it in terms of different foods. So if you eat steak, do you crave more steak? If you eat broccoli, do you crave more broccoli? If you eat apples, do you crave more apples? No. What happens is you eat those foods, you enjoy their flavors, then you start to feel satisfied, and then honestly, you get kind of bored with the flavor. The first bite tastes way better than the 10th bite. And our body just desires different foods so that we can get a different mix of nutrients. That's why the most satisfying meals have a mix of different foods with different textures and flavors and nutrient profiles. Now, it could be the case that you've trained your palate to only really enjoy sweet foods or to need a lot of sweetness before food tastes like anything. But that's not about cravings. That's about eating a variety of foods and learning to appreciate a variety of flavors. The good news about this is it's something you can change. Now, some of our food preferences are biological. Some people just prefer some foods and don't really care for others, but a lot of it is just based on what you eat. It's something that you learn. Our food preferences begin in our mother's womb, where we start to experience the flavors of the foods that she eats in the amniotic fluid, and then that continues if you're breastfed, because you get the flavors of the food that your mother is eating through her breast milk, and then it continues again as you start to eat on your own and you start to learn about different foods based on what the people around you feed you. This is why people from different cultures have different food preferences. It's the familiarity and the exposure that allows you to learn how to appreciate and enjoy different foods and different flavors. So if you think that your palate is really skewed towards sweetness and you're not able to appreciate a lot of different flavors, if fruit doesn't taste sweet to you, for example, or if something like a carrot, if you can't tell that that has some sweetness to it, then, go ahead and try to incorporate different foods into your life. Try different things that maybe you haven't tried before and work on learning about those different flavors, different cooking methods. All of that stuff can make a difference and help you to expand your horizons when it comes to the different foods that you eat and the foods that you enjoy. And when it comes to food cravings, including sugar, the opposite is actually true. So it's not that eating the food makes you crave more of it, but eliminating and restricting a food makes you crave more of it. And this is part biological, part psychological, but what happens here when we restrict or eliminate a food is that our body is pushing us to go for that food because it's forbidden. We're never allowed to have it. And you might be able to hold out for a while, but in the end, you're gonna reach your breaking point and you're gonna go for that food. And when you do that, you're not just gonna have a little bite here or there. It often turns into a binge. And if you have been on diets before, then you may have experienced this, where you restrict or eliminate a food or a group of foods for a while, and then eventually you hit that breaking point, and then it's kind of a free-for-all. You feel like you can't control yourself, you overeat, and this is something that we look at a lot of times as a personal failure, but it's really just how our bodies work. It's not our fault. Our body is going to push us to eat those forbidden foods, and then once we actually do, our brain and our body know that this is something that maybe we won't ever get again, or we might not get for a very long time because it's forbidden. And so then what happens is we eat more of it. We overeat it because the idea is we might never get this thing again. And since we've already broken the rule and taken that first bite, we might as well eat as much as we possibly can. And for a lot of people, when this happens, it kind of confirms to them that they need to restrict that food or eliminate it, because it's like, wow, did you see that? I totally lost control. But the truth is, it's the restriction that's causing that binge, out of control feeling and behavior. And it's this vicious cycle. You know, we restrict, that results in the binge, and then that binge tells us that we should restrict again, and we just keep going down and down and down in this downward spiral. So instead, what we need to do is break that cycle. Don't go back to restricting, but just give yourself full permission to eat the foods that you want. And in the beginning, this can feel scary, and you might feel a little out of control because your brain and your body haven't caught up with this idea, or they might not trust you yet that, you know, this really is, you know, the restriction is over, we can really have these things. But as you become more comfortable and do it more and more and more, you'll get to that place where you can have the food if you want it, and you can stop when you're satisfied, rather than feeling like you have to have it all the time and that you have to eat as much as possible and that it has total control over you. Another message that you hear, maybe not explicitly, but it's definitely in there with a lot of this quitting sugar stuff, is that nutrition is the only thing that matters when it comes to our food choices. And this again just isn't true. Nutrition is something we should consider. It's part of our decision-making process when we're deciding what to eat. And believe me, I care about nutrition. I'm a dietitian. This is my job. It's something that I'm interested in. But it's not the only thing that matters here. Other things to consider are what foods you like, what sounds good right now, your food traditions and your food culture. There's a lot of other stuff that goes into this decision-making process. So considering nutrition definitely, you know, is a fine thing to do. I'm not saying to throw it out the window, but it shouldn't be your sole focus or the only thing that you pay attention to. So if we're not going to be quitting sugar and going on some sugar detox, then what do we do instead? Well, the first thing I think you can do is stop restricting. Now, this is easier said than done for sure, but it's something to work on because it really makes such a big difference. Now, if you want some resources, the book Intuitive Eating is a great resource to work on some of this stuff on your own. I'll leave a link for it below the video if you want to go check it out. Great book. Also, you know, it might benefit you to reach out to a professional. If you feel like you need help getting rid of the restriction and the diet mindset, talk to a dietitian who works in intuitive eating and a non-diet approach, like myself or someone else. Just find that person who can guide you if you need that extra support. The next thing you can do is be mindful. Pay attention to your food. So much of our eating is mindless eating. Pay attention to the flavors and the textures and the aromas. Really enjoy it. Pay attention to how food makes you feel. Pay attention to your fullness and your hunger and how satisfied you feel with the food that you're eating. And incorporate a variety of food and flavors into your diet and learn to appreciate them. Really opening up your world when it comes to food and trying new things and being adventurous can make a big difference in your nutrition and your health, but also in your overall enjoyment and satisfaction with the food that you eat. And let me know in the comments, have you ever tried quitting sugar or have you thought about it? And did you find the info in this video helpful? Did I change your mind about some things? I'd love to hear that in the comments below. And if you are new here and you want more healthy eating tips and nutrition info and videos like this one, then make sure that you subscribe, because eating healthy and living a healthy lifestyle really doesn't have to be complicated, and I want to show you how to do it. And if you want to watch some more videos, I have a couple linked over here that you might like. Thanks for watching. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.